In this session, we are going to talk about the organizational model within CRM. So, what is an organizational model? Org model is a model of entities that helps map your marketing, sales, and service structure. It is represented by org units and their attributes. With the help of organizational management, you can determine the responsible org unit within a transaction. Some of the key features of org management in CRM are: first of all, you can now, in the latest release of CRM, edit the org model using the web client UI. The org structure in CRM can be different from that in the ERP system. There are no restrictions on the levels that can be used in the structure in CRM. However, you cannot map a matrix structure within the CRM org model. Validity periods can be specified when creating org objects and object attributes, and when assigning org objects and object characteristics. Org unit in CRM, and we will look at that in the system in a moment, can be created as business partners. The system automatically creates an account for an org unit with the role org unit. You can specify validity periods when editing the org model. The determination of an org unit within a transaction can be either done manually or using rules set up in the system. To determine the org data automatically, the system reads the organizational data profile attached to the transaction type in customizing, and a determination rule is then derived from this org data profile. There are two types of determination rules possible: the org model based and the responsibilities based. The org data of the transaction header can be copied to the item level. There is no separate org data determination at the item level. The org data can be downloaded automatically from an ECC system. However, Delta functionality is not supported, which basically means that once you've downloaded, any changes made in the ECC system are not automatically updated to the CRM system. If you wish to use HR and you have maintained the organizational plan in HR, you can distribute this organizational plan to SAP CRM with application link enabling the ALE functionality. So let us now have a look at how we can see the org model in the web client. So we go to sales operations, and under sales operation we go to the org model, and here we get the search screen for the org model. So I'm going to search for IDIS training company, and I have my org unit here, which is the IDIS training company. When I go into details, I can see that IDIS training company is at the top level of the hierarchy, and there's a trade fair department and a position of head of the trade fair department, which is held by this person here. Now some details about the org unit, the attributes, the org unit determination settings, and so on. Now let me try to create another org unit. So I create the org unit called 11 Trade Fair, and I save it. So this has been successfully saved now, and I haven't yet entered all the details which I can enter subsequently. So we have now successfully created an org unit. Now if we look at the details under the org unit details, it belongs to the parent IDIS CRM training company. And if we go down to attributes, we can see that some of the attributes are already populated. These values, where do these come from? They have been inherited from the parent IDIS CRM training company automatically, and by virtue of being inherited, these cannot be changed. Now if we go to service and have a look at the postal code, we find that the postal code range is 75000 to 75099. Now this range will help us automatically determine the org unit in subsequent transactions that we create. And now we are going to assign a user. First we'll create a position, a new position under 11 Trade Fair. And then we will assign a user, our user, to this position. So username 11 user. The system hasn't been able to find it. It's user 11, and user 11 has now been assigned to the new position. So we just save this, and now we go to the customizing settings and try to create an org determination rule that will help us determine this org unit in a transaction that we create. We now go into customizing to see how the org data determination rules are determined. So customer relationship management, org data is part of the master data. So master data, org management, change rules and profiles, maintain determination rules. So essentially we are looking for a rule that will take the country and the postcode and return to us the organizational unit. These are the existing rules that are already there in the system. The best thing to do normally is to look at a rule which is similar to your requirements and then to simply tweak it a little bit so that you get exactly what you need. So this one is talking about org attributes. So let's see what this rule is all about. If we go into detail, we can see that this is the function module. If I double click on this, it will take me to the function module itself, and wherein I can see the exact coding that is behind this org rule determination. If I'm inclined to do that, that is great, but otherwise I can simply press this simulate button and I enter my country, for example, and just simulate, and I get this. So this rule gives me the responsible agent and the org unit based on the country. Now let's look at the org data profile itself. This is where the org data profile is maintained within customizing. And if I look at the profile ZIDIS01 and ZIDIS01 for service, I need to maintain a profile for both sales and service depending on the transaction I'm using. So if I look at this in detail, I find that for the sales scenario, my responsibilities determination rule is 8000150. So let's see if we can find any more details for that. So this essentially runs on the basis of the country and the region. For this rule, sales org and distribution channel are mandatory. And now if I go to the corresponding rule for service, find this is based on the responsible service org unit, which has the attribute as the country, and the service org is mandatory. So now this org determination rule ZIDIS01 needs to be assigned to my transaction type, which is in the next step, assign org data profile to transaction type. It can also be assigned to the item category, but in this case now we are going to assign it to the transaction type, and the transaction type is AG, which is something that we have used in the past. So if I look at AG and go to details, if I scroll down, I find that org data profile of ZIDIS01 is assigned. Now in another session I will quickly create a transaction and see if my org data profile ZIDIS_01 actually brings the correct org unit within the transaction. So I'm going to create a transaction. We are using the SAP GUI for this exercise. at least partially, and I will quickly go into the reason for that. But first, let us create a quotation and see how the org data is determined. So I need to choose a party which is in the which has as part of their address the country is specified. So I choose 20 megastore, and I have no errors. I have successfully created this. Now if I quickly go to the organization details, note that I haven't even entered the product because my org data profile was at the header level, at the transaction level, and not at the item category level. So hopefully it should have worked. So let us go to the organization tab, and here we see that the system has determined the sales org units and the service org units. Now the reason we needed to see this in SAP GUI rather than on the web client was because of this little tab here, display log. This actually shows you how the system has determined the org unit. So if I click on this, I see that the system has used the org data profile ZIDs_01, the one we saw in customizing a little while ago. This is the responsibilities rule for that. This is the transaction type. This is the determination rule for the service part. These are the attributes that it has evaluated, and it's found the following org units. So for service, it's service US. So that's how the org unit determination works. One more thing to keep in mind is when you make a change to your org structure, it is not immediately reflected in the transactions or in other parts of the configuration. What you need to do is you need to go to a program called HRBCI_attributes_buffer_update and run this program, which clears the cache for the org structure and takes in the latest data that you might have set up. So I had to do this when I was making changes in the org unit. One more interesting and useful thing which you might find is we saw the org structure on the web client, but we can also see the org structure within the SAP GUI, and there's a transaction called PPOMA_CRM. If you've been working on CRM for a long time, this is what you would normally be used to, because in the earlier versions of CRM, this was the way to set up the org structure and the org units. So to take an example, if you look at US sales and service, and if you go to functions, you'll see that for the sales function, this org unit US sales and service is valid, and it's got a corresponding are 3 sales organization assigned as well, which means that when transactions related to this org unit are created in CRM and replicated to ECC or ERP, then the ERP sales organization selected is 3020. If you click on the service tab, this org unit has also got a plant assigned to it and is valid as a service organization for CRM. And if you look at attributes, we find that for sales it is allowed to be determined as an org unit, which we saw just now in the transaction. Let's see for service as well, and again we saw that in a transaction. And this is a consistency check. When you change the values of the attributes, if there are a number of attributes, you might easily put in values which are not valid, and that's where this consistency check comes in. Now I've just left a few values blank which are mandatory and the system doesn't like it. So here's where it tells you what the problem is, and you can investigate and fix it. So you see this US sales and service was the sales organization that was determined in our transaction, and if you scroll down, US service was the service organization. So if you quickly flip back and see our transaction, so US sales and service as the sales org and US service as the service org.